Hi, this is Andy with Mountain Computers. Today is March 22nd. It's a Friday, and some people were accessing some of my code from one of my old medical systems. I wrote about 21 medical systems over the past 20 years, and these people were looking at my code and they were asking me how and why I did what I did and do it so successfully. So here in Nevada, as well as other states, I've done lots of systems that started out small and became big. I designed them from the ground up to scale and integrate. And I'm just going to tell you the quick secrets that I used. And this is long before I really got into heavy programming. And I'm pretty much out of it now. I mean, I do a lot of systems integration still. I do a lot of tokenized systems. I do a lot of serialized systems. But why is it that I wrote these medical systems to be still running today? And even when the big heavy companies, big iron companies like out of Florida and Minnesota, Nebraska, these $1 million systems, why do my little systems that only cost like $3,000 or $4,000 still work in comparison to them? And there's three reasons. And it's all about, before we had HIPAA compliance, I knew, based on the systems I wrote, there's three things that track the patient, which is the customer. And I learned this from actually doing the job with several of the departments in these hospitals. And when you go into a hospital and you go into a department like radiology, laboratory, any department that's heavy into data, ER not so much, medical records, billing, quality records, not the smaller ones like anesthesiology. You know, OB is interesting. I said ER. There's like 21 departments in a hospital, and I call it the 21 systems. There's three things that go into your system in any department, and that's one is called the global ID, and that's a uniquely generated ID that won't be unique on any system, separate and apart. Separate and apart and together. And that's a GUID. That's something that you can make up, and it's based on lots of things. That'll be based on time, seconds, machine, network, or Microsoft has a way of doing that, and that has to do with replication. But that's been going on for a long time. So create your own. But then the second thing is your medical record number and then the date of birth. So as a patient, I walk into a hospital, and doesn't matter what department I'm in, and my systems, either connected or disconnected, would track you based on just a record ID, the transaction, a medical record number, which was hospital-wide, and my date of birth. Now these are all HIPAA compliant. None of this is identifiable to me. So I went to another hospital, or I went to another department. They knew it was me as far as billing goes, but nobody knew that it was me, Andy Flagg. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because there's some systems that are going into play right now, especially in some of the language systems like TypeScript, and that's JavaScript. That's been going on for a while, and I've been doing it for 20 years. But that's sort of client-side, server-side, node-side. But the reason why I want to tell you this is when it comes down to your medical record systems, and we've got Washoe Med, which is now Renown, and St. Mary's, and the Nevada Rural Health Consortium. And a lot of these systems I've written, they've replaced over the last 20 years. And some of my other systems that work in different county departments that are light client server-based applications that can scale up to SQL or any kind of relational database management system. That thinking of those three things, a global ID, record ID, row ID, a medical record number, which is more or less my unique situation, whether or not I'm born, I live and die in that same place, that same hospital, that same county and city or town. and then my date of birth. Those three things is what makes me unique. That's the trick. And so some of these people are looking at my systems and said, how is it that when we take these apart and put them back together, they don't conflict? But when you put them together, they magically align for billing, because billing used to take 2 to 3 weeks. Now it takes 2 to 3 hours. Because you take something that's manual, like radiology, from printing labels to folders to records to PAC systems to teleradiology to the pharmacy, where you have 18 different systems in the pharmacy, not pharmacy, but in the laboratory. And all of these have to talk to each other, either wirelessly or on the wire. I like it better on the wire because of the size of the data you're working with. And reporting. So when a doctor wants to pull up somebody, they can do it by medical record number, date of birth, and the global ID just keeps sort of its marker in the database, depending on if the database is disparate or joined or whatever. It doesn't matter. Backups and restores don't matter. Merging data between data sets don't matter. The trailing metadata of the medical system, that just comes along. And this blockchain thing that everybody's talking about, you know, that it's immutable and it's all this and it's all that, that doesn't matter. That's all about not tampering with the data. That's all that's about. You know, we have a DMV department. Not really dysfunctional, not the people, but the systems people, the people that do the systems. That was dysfunctional, and it's going to be dysfunctional again when they do the blockchain. I'm not really worried about that, but I hope the people, the powers that be, are paying attention to the system, architecture, record, tracking, recovery, what's identifiable but not identifiable. It's really scaring me a little bit about, just like some of these big medical companies came in and replaced my systems, and they really screwed it up, where the hospital was totally in the black and now they're totally in the red, because it took them what they thought was a couple months, and then they've taken a couple years to implement and replace some of my systems, and they just screwed it up. And everybody's mad, and the mainframes and the servers, they're rebooting and crashing, the data's getting lost, and billing is crazy. Everybody's behind, nothing's working, the UI is heavy and fat, it's not light and thin, and reporting is slow, and quality metrics suck, and reports are... it has to do with the programmers don't think. And the systems analysts and the project managers, we were thinking about, I want to share this with some of my CEOs and CIOs and COOs and tell them about the IT fog that's out there, and the disinformation and misinformation that vendors and even internal people, they complicate things. I can tell you right now, keep it simple. Don't procrastinate, just make sure you have good backups. But when it comes to systems architecture, bring in people that know what they're doing, that can look at the data, that can look at the integration, the long range, the short range, and don't break systems that work. A big heart and lung group that's nationwide. I look at their architecture that some vendor threw at them, and I was like, that sucks. And so without even looking at their stuff deeply, I just architected their entire future system. And they didn't choose me because they were like, well, you're only one person. And I said, yeah, but I've done hundreds and hundreds of systems that continue to work today. And they don't call me because it just works. It's resilient, it's tough, it doesn't crash, it's light, it's fast. Your data is as tight as possible. There's not a lot of bloat. So I really wanted to share this video and tell you about, when it comes to doing medical systems, there's three things: a global ID, a medical record number, and the date of birth. That's all you need to track somebody that's HIPAA compliant. Identifiable but not identifiable. If you wrap blockchain around that or put it into a blockchain stream, fine, do whatever you want. But what's important is that you can unwrap it and protect it and easily transfer it, join it, integrate it, a pin to it, wrapper around it. I've done a lot of wrappers on Unix systems to Windows systems to Mac systems, and when you do all this integration stuff, what's important is the fact that you know that other people will come along and either try to replace it and they can't. Not because it doesn't need to be replaced, but if it works and it scales up and it meets all the federal, state, and local regulations, keep it. You know, I have systems that have been running for almost, what is it, 28 years now, still running. Retail, e-commerce, some of my e-commerce stuff still works today, and 1 million customers. And I mean, you have to think, folks, about who's designing your systems and to protect against attack. You don't have to replace the system sometimes to avoid attacks. You have to build a better moat, a drawbridge. Just put some layers that don't tamper with the core of the system and why it works so good. Don't replace it with a new technology that hasn't been proven. Don't replace it with a new group of people that don't know what they're doing. They just came out of college, you know, or they just came from some Ivy League school, or they just came off of some other government project that was massive, but you don't know about all the problems they created or they're going to bring along with them, or slow it down. Some of these systems and projects only take like 3 months to implement, not a year to 3 years, to the tune of millions of dollars. It should be, just because it's medical doesn't mean it's 4 times as expensive. It shouldn't be. I'm not trying to avoid making a profit. I'm trying to avoid future headaches to where people look at me 5-10 years later and say, we should have never done that. I want them to look back at me and say, that was the best thing we've ever done. Why did we ever change our ways? Well, that's just because some people just don't learn. And to me, I just don't like the headaches. I like to develop a great system, let it stand on its own, it's fully documented, easy to maintain, even easy to replace with newer hardware. It's the same architecture, you know. So anyhow, this is Andy from Mountain Computers. Just wanted to share with you about 21 medical systems, the 3 things that go into that system, and what's important is it's got to be light, fast, maintainable, supportable, trainable, documentable, will stand the test of time, is easy for people to use and like. You know, it's got to be fast. It doesn't have to be super pretty, but it's got to be functional. Okay, and it all comes down to taking care of the customer as well as the business, going through any kind of billing systems or what have you. Okay, billing, integration, reports, all that stuff should be customizable, easy to maintain, and that's about it. So just like, share, and subscribe, and there'll be more to come. Have a great day. This is Andy from Mountain Computers.